Welcome to Storyteller the Storyteller. I'm Shannon Cason. Storyteller the Storyteller is creative conversations with me. I like to talk about live storytelling. I watch a lot of comedy podcasts and different other kind of podcasts, but I don't see any like about live storytelling. It might be some, but this is mine. And today I'm talking to Gabe Mollica. I met Gabe at a Moth party. It was a farewell party for Catherine. Catherine. It was her farewell party. Catherine Burns. She was the artistic director, and she left. And it was an office party. It was like everybody there. It was like jazz. Famous Christian McBride was there. Neil Gaiman was there. And when there's people there, I'm kind of like stay to myself. But I met Gabe, and we started to talk. And sometimes when you talk to people, it's like they're talking to you, waiting to go to somebody else and talk to somebody else. But Gabe and me just kind of like hung out for a little bit. And I found out he was into comedy. And I found out he was into storytelling. And I found out he had a pretty popular solo show too. So I'm going to bring him up. We're going to talk more and we'll see where the conversation goes. Yep. What's up, Gabe?
Shannon, it's nice to be talking to you again. The last time we were talking, it was over a plate of cheese. I found you by the cheese and crackers, and that's where you will find me, my man.
You got a good memory because we were like hovering. I mean, it was like maybe spit particles might have been because we were laughing, but we were just right on over the cheese, just talking.
We're hanging by the cheese,
put cheese down. We were like, okay, go ahead, put it right there.
Yeah, well, it's funny. Like I'm a little bit involved with the Moth, but not like a ton. And I just recently become friends with Catherine, so I'm going into an environment where I'm like, this is an away game for me. This is like not my scene. And you were like, I'm from Chicago, and I was like, this is great. Yeah. I feel we connected in the way that comedians.
You had that regular guy energy that I love, man. You know what I'm saying? Just like normal dudes. I'm not trying. I like to meet Neil Gaiman, but I'm not gonna go stand in line and say, "Hey, Neil."
Yeah.
I'm not that type. I'm just kind of like just gonna chill out, and whoever run into me. But when I was talking to you, like what I've seen about you, and from that conversation. And then from just what I, researched and looked into you, stand-up, you have been doing stand-up for a long time. And then, I don't know how long, but stand-up, I saw that you told some stories with the Moth or told a story or two with the Moth. But then, and I hadn't heard those yet. But then I heard about your solo show. And I saw the solo show, like, after I found out about it, I saw it everywhere. And then I saw it on This American Life. I'm like, wow, okay. So he does the comedy, the storytelling, but also the solo show. Those are the things that I know. Go a little deeper. Tell me a little bit more about your background, things that I wouldn't know.
Sure. So I got into comedy. I was a music kid for years. I thought I was going to be a music teacher. And in 2013, my best friend Nick, who's a big part of my show now, sent me a comedy special, and he's like, I think you would enjoy this. This is the kind of thing that you would enjoy. And it was My Girlfriend's Boyfriend, the Mike Birbiglia Netflix special. And I watched it with this woman I was dating at the time. And there's very rarely this happens, but they do happen where you're just like, this piece of art like changed my life. Like this piece of like, I didn't know comedy could be that. I didn't know it could feel like a movie of your life. And you could talk about different eras of your life and your growth and just like, and have killer jokes the whole way. And so I saw that and I immediately was like, I want to do that. And like on the bus back to college on my notes app, I started writing a solo show. And it took me years because then I lived
what
abroad.
Year is this? Bring me like what
this
time
is like
is this?
2013.
This note?
This is 2013.
2013. Okay.
Yeah, and so then the next year I graduate college and I got a job in Scotland, and it's very lonely teaching in Scotland because I'm 22 and I don't know anybody. I'm older than the students. I'm younger than the teachers. I'm just like totally alone. I made one friend who ended up becoming an exotic dancer. That was my only friend.
That's cool.
And yeah, that's another story. And I just started doing stand-up just mostly, most of the time. In Scotland, And
that's
I think a lot of
people, okay.
That's where I started, which was great, Shannon, because I'm anonymous. No one knows who I
nobody.
am.
You bomb. Who cares? You know.
Who cares? I'm never the last show I did over there. I said I'm leaving for America tomorrow. So if you like any of these jokes, you can have them, because I don't care if you steal them, because I'm leaving. So I did that, and I knew right away that I wanted to do a bunch of jokes and do stand up in order to do a solo show.
Wow.
Where that was always the goal, which, Birbiglia, Hassan Minaj, a lot of the Jacqueline Novak, Alex Edelman, maybe even a lot of these people, like, they do stand up for a long time and then they pivot.
Yeah.
Where I was kind of like, the whole way I knew that was the
your
goal.
mind was on the solo show, and a lot of people in comedy, from what I know, I'm not a comedian or anything, but from what I listen to comedy podcasts, I love Mark Maron's, and then I was listening to a lot of the earlier podcasts. That's what I've been podcasting since 2010, 2009, so I've been listening to those forever. But from what I hear, a lot of them, some of them have other pursuits as well, like acting, or I want to be a writer, but I'm doing stand-up. You get what I'm saying? And then there's some people who just true stand-ups. I want to go to smoke-filled rooms, which people don't smoke no more, but they want to go to smoke-filled rooms, and
I want to headline Go Bananas in Cincinnati.
Yeah, they just want to headline. They want to be the funniest person in the room, which I respect that as well. But you had a mindset on you, like, I want to do solo shows.
Yeah, I wanted to, and I was a theater kid in school.
Okay.
So, like, I think the whole time it was like, it would be cool to make theater. It would be cool to make something like an off-Broadway show. And so, like, whenever an off-Broadway comedy show would come to New York, I would see it. I've seen every stand-up solo show, that comes to New York, because that was my medium. I felt like I was studying. And to be honest with you, Shannon, one of the things I've learned in the last couple of years is I kept thinking I need to have more success in comedy before anyone will take my solo show seriously.
I like this.
Where, like, my cousin is a writer for The Daily Show. He wrote with Trevor Noah for years.
He's a comedian?
He's a comedian. He wrote for the Grammys. And so he has had a lot of success. And so there was something in my...
What's his name?
His name is Devin Delaquanti. Okay. And he does stand up also, but he's mostly a writer.
Okay.
And so for years, I kind of thought, like, oh, I think I need to, like, write for a TV show, or like go viral making a sketch on Instagram before anyone will take my solo show seriously. And one of the things I learned is that, like, if you take your show seriously and you just keep doing it, eventually people will notice. Like, there's no limit. No one says you have to stop. And, like, I have friends now who have, like, written for Jimmy Fallon or whatever, and they have solo shows, and they're in the same position I am of trying to get people to see it.
Yeah, because the thing is, y'all both started. Now, let's go into that a little deeper. Okay, you're doing stand-up. You was in Scotland, you started, you moved back to the States, you in New York doing comedy, but you have been thinking about solo shows. When did you start, like, actually have a show, or start writing your show and to actually finish a show?
Yeah. So the first time I ever did any version of the show that became the show I do now, which I'm doing in Chicago this week, was the winter of 2019. I did, like, a half-hour version. And if you were to see that show, Shannon, you would be like, this is a mess. It was like 15 minutes of jokes and that were, like, unrelated, and a 15-minute story. So it was as if I just, like, didn't have I didn't know how to combine those two things yet, right? I was like, oh, I have jokes I do at clubs, and I have a 15-minute story that I'm piecing together, and I just did them all together, and I called it a solo show.
Okay.
And it was one of the best nights of my life. I think because part of me knew, for the first time in my life, like, I did the thing that I've always wanted to do. And I did it at the Magnet Theater, it's an improv theater.
What a Magnet Theater. Yeah, I think I've been there. I think I performed there before. Yeah. Yeah,
it's a great space, and they're really supportive. And I split the show with a sketch show. And so half the audience was there to see me, and the other half was there to see the sketch show, which is, like, the perfect balance, because like, it's some people who like you and then some people who don't know you at all. And it was one of those things where the show, it went really well. It went, like, way better than I thought it would go. And Then I did it 2 or 3 weeks later at a bar in Manhattan on like the second floor of a bar. It was like 8 drunk people. And the show got better because I had listened to it and I had taken notes and I started moving things around and started to make it more cohesive. And the show got better. And the experience of me doing it was way worse. And I was like, this is so unfair that the show could get better, but based on the audience and the scenario and whatever, it got worse. And I thought, oh, this is going to be really hard because you're going to have to do it a million times in front of bad audiences. Even if the show is getting better, it might not feel that way.
Okay.
And it started this thing in my life where I'm like, oh, that first audience, oh, if only they could have seen me this week. This version is better. I don't want them to see that, which is how I still feel now.
Yeah. So what? Okay, that was what year was that?
That was 2019.
2019 is when you started the show, and it was the amalgamation of jokes and then stories.
Yes, really one big story
that you had,
which is I had a friendship breakup in like 2000 when I was in Scotland, like 2014, 2015.
Yeah,
and I had this. Me and my best friend kind of broke up. It was a love triangle. It didn't go well. And I started comedy right after that. So I kind of knew right away. I was like, oh, this feels like a thing that could be in a solo show. I just like didn't know how to do it. And I didn't have a lot of jokes. So I kind of spent the next couple of years just like running around performing, telling little stories, telling jokes, but knowing, oh, I want to turn that into a solo show.
When you were performing, okay, so you performing these jokes, you doing jokes everywhere. Were the jokes attached to the solo show? You get what I'm saying? Were you saying these jokes, and I'm using these jokes to practice for the solo show?
Yeah, yes and no. So like obviously sometimes you just write a random joke about Doritos tacos or whatever. Yeah. But one of the things I did at a certain point when I had I had 20 minutes of jokes and a 20-minute story is I just wrote down everything. And I realized I was like, oh, I only really write jokes about like 4 things. So like naturally, because the jokes were coming from me, all the jokes I was doing could fit into the story in some way. It wasn't like I was like writing one-liners about light bulbs and then I was trying to do a solo show. Like all of my comedy kind of comes from me.
Yeah.
Where like I'm not like that Seinfeld thing where he's just like, oh, I'm going to analyze Halloween as an idea and like break it down and like understand it. Yeah. For me, my version of that would be like, what was being 10 and dressing up like this for Halloween? What was that like? It's always coming from me. I don't know any other way to do it.
Yeah. I never know any sign back callbacks or any Seinfeld. And I like that though. You know what I'm saying? I never know because people be throwing stuff. I'd be like, nah, I don't know what you
yeah.
But it's like such common stuff. But I like that. In certain ways, I'd be like, I never.
And sometimes in a story, if you slip in a detail of, if you're in your story, you're talking about your suitcase and you have a real thing. Sometimes you can find a suitcase joke in there, but I'm not sitting alone in my room writing suitcase jokes. Yeah, you know what I mean? I'm writing stories and then, oh, do I need a joke about a suitcase here? Then I'll try to write one.
No, I get it because everything is kind of feeding into it in certain ways because it's you. It's about you. It's about your experience. I mean, it has an overlying theme, but you're in it. So the story, the jokes, the everything kind of relates to you. Now, what's the difference? Like, are there different muscles? I'm sure it's different muscles to storytelling, like you would do on a solo show, to being in front of a stage for a comedy, for a comedy show.
Oh, absolutely.
You got to use different muscles for that. And then do you feel like, do you feel one is stronger than the other,
Yeah, I've definitely had more success in the story version. Like I think I'm funny, but like New York has 1 million comedians, like so many, and there's so many people that just go in there and kill and just like joke, relentless, great. And I like to think I'm pretty, like I have a lot of jokes, but like I think I'm better at storytelling, and I think the nature of storytelling is that like no one could write it but you, which I really like. where sometimes you're writing a joke and it feels like, depending on the topic, like another person could have come up with this. But when you're telling your own personal stories, it's my experience, and so like no one could do it but me. I really do try to work both muscles, the stand-up and the storytelling. I do. It's honestly, it's easier for me to get booked on stand-up shows because there's more of them. But and when I do that, I'll just, I'll take my 4 or 5 ideas and try to write as many jokes about them. And then when I get a storytelling show, I'm like, great, I'll take the jokes that I need and put them within the framework of this story that I'm trying to tell. And I'll use what's useful and I'll cut out what's not useful. Where in stand-up, you don't cut out anything. You're just like, how funny can this be?
I like using both. Even though I'm not a comedian, I'll do certain things to put myself in a circumstance where I got to stand face to face to the audience because the storytelling stuff, to be honest with you, I come out of like hip hop and those kind of things when I was young, and it'd be feeling hokey to me. I'd be like, don't like me too much before I'll do things to kind of like almost turn the audience in a way, because I want a little adversity. I don't want
now
it.
You're talking.
I don't want you just to be clapping.
Now you are talking about
that. I want to fight to get it.
Shannon.
And with comedy, it's like you got to fight to get it, and with storytelling, it's almost like they just laying on the bed just ready for me. Like,
Shannon, you are so right. There are two in my show. My show it's about masculinity and it's about male friendship and it's wholesome, right? There's some wholesome stuff to it. But in the first 20 minutes of my show, there's a joke about Osama bin Laden and there's a joke about Anne Frank and the Holocaust. Not because those things are so funny, but because I think the bits work and I want the audience to be on their toes a little bit. You know what I mean? Like, I have a little edge to me. I'm going to make jokes that are like not super edgy, but like a little edgy. I do want to feel like it's not just a Gabe love fest and everything I do is great and I'm never going to say anything that bothers you. I do think that's really, really important. I think comparing the hip hop analogy is very strong.
I think you're on an amusement ride right now. But it's all right. It's all right. It all works. I can see you running on a treadmill right now.
Yeah, sorry. I'm excited.
No, you fine. You fine. This is fun. This is fun. Now so okay, you coming to Chicago soon. Now you've been 2019. You started the story. You did different iterations of different things with it. The early stories, it sounded like it was about 30 minutes or so.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and now how long is it?
So I did it. I mean, I worked years on this thing, and it was basically the only thing I worked at. I brought it to the Edinburgh Fringe Festival in 2019, and then in 2022, I brought it back post-COVID.
Congratulations on that. That's wonderful.
Thank you. Yeah, it was important for me. I lost money, definitely. It was stressful, but I really cared about the show.
How did that feel going to the Edinburgh? Because people who do solo shows, that's like a moment. You get what I'm saying? Yeah.
Yes, it's definitely a moment. Honestly, the best thing for me was the community of other people who were doing it. Yeah. Where it's like you're going to this place where like other comedians are working on their solo shows and you get to see a bunch of shows. You get to hang out with a bunch of people who do solo shows. You get to see people from other countries. How do they do it in England? How do they do it in Australia? How do they do it in Wales?
So you were like in the study fest too at the same time when you was.
Yeah. Oh yeah. For me, that's more important because it's not like I made a bunch of money. It's not like I had this hit run where like I was selling out every night. That was not the case. It was more, honestly, I saw them kind of like, it's kind of like going to summer camp, comedy storytelling summer camp a little bit, where you're just with all these people. It's 35 days or 30 days or whatever. There's nothing else to do but see comedy and talk and hang out. And so
how important is that? You get what I'm saying? To saturate yourself in your medium, just fully saturation. You doing your show, you're probably seeing things that you want to add to your show, or just different confidence that comes up knowing the intention of your show as you watching other shows or seeing other things, depending on if you can do that. Some people can't watch other stuff at the time they're doing stuff, but if that's a part of your process, I love that kind of stuff where I can just take time. And I got this 8 weeks or however long it runs. I don't know how long it runs. And you just kind of just diving into your art for that long,
Totally. You know what? I saw this thing. Are you a sports fan, Shannon?
Somewhat. I used to be, but not as much anymore. I was a 90s sports guy, but I know all the players and stuff. So if you use an analogy,
sure.
Yeah,
I saw this thing recently with Travis Kelce where he had like a tight end, like it was a school, like a 2-week school for just people who play the position of tight end.
And
dope. I thought, oh, that's so specific, right? Like you think football, there's a lot of different things. There's kicker school, there's long snapper school, but for the people who love tight end, and you're only with 25 other tight ends, you're gonna really pick up on a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
And so Edinburgh is just that specific, right? Yeah. It's like this type of comedy because you could go to, there's podcasters, there's people who do sketches, there's influencers, there's people who just do jokes. But Edinburgh is this really cool opportunity to just focus on this stuff. So in Edinburgh, every show is basically 50 minutes. Okay. But when I got back to New York, there was no time limit, like within reason. And so now the show is about 80 minutes. And it wasn't like I wrote a new half hour. It was that, this one line turned into a 4-minute story. That happened a couple times where it's like, oh yeah, I used to throw in this one detail and then I just built that out a little bit longer. And then if that happens 2 or 3 times in a show, I'll just expand that. It's so much easier to edit and add than to like write a whole new idea.
Yeah.
And so when you have the solo show, you just pick a thing and it's like an accordion. You write it really long and then you edit it down a little bit and it ends up being an extra 2-3 minutes 4 times. And suddenly your show's 80 minutes and not 50.
Yeah. Yeah. The, what other places did you go? Cause I know you toured. When I met you, I looked at and saw the show and then I saw that you were doing it like you were like in Milwaukee or you were some other places as well. Like where all have you been? I know you coming here to Chicago on the 20th through the 23rd at Den Theater, and I'm gonna be there. I'm gonna be there.
Can't wait to see you, man.
Yeah. So I can't wait to see the show. But what other places have you toured? And then any interesting stories out of those places? Edinburgh sounded like it was amazing, but any other interesting story?
Yeah. I did Pittsburgh. I did Boston, Portsmouth, New Hampshire, which is a great city, Washington, D.C. My favorite thing about touring the show is I've always said sometimes during the show when I'm trying to feel out the audience, I will say out loud, there's a joke for everybody. Like there's something that you're going to like. Like maybe you don't like this, maybe you don't like that, but there will be one joke that you're like, oh, that kind of felt like it was for me. And one of the cool things about traveling around, and I'm sure you know this from the Moth, is that certain things or certain ideas work better in different cities. So like when I was in Pittsburgh, they really loved all the drinking stories where they were like, hell yeah, drink it.
Yeah. I know Pittsburgh.
Yeah. In DC, when I threw in a little joke about politics, I have like a very quickly, just like a little joke about Barack Obama. It's this big, but just throw it in there. And they went, oh my God, we love that. We know what you're talking about, and that's really fun for me because it's like, in New York, there's a bunch of, I reference musical theater a lot, and the people in New York care about musical theater. But in LA, when I did it, they don't care about musical theater. Any movie reference they loved. Yeah, and I'm like, it's almost like a cliche. Yeah. But I have the evidence. Like I've done it a bunch of places, so that's so satisfying.
You booking these places yourself? How you doing it? Is it like you with a whole touring crew? Is it a big thing like how Beyonce comes in and it's like
I will tell you
put up lights and all this. But tell me this though.
One-man band.
You have changed though. You told me that it's more to your show than just the man with a mic now. So
for years
a little bit.
Yeah. For years, it was just me talking into a microphone. I could do it myself. I could do it with no mic. I needed a soapbox to stand on, and I could do the show. Slowly, off Broadway, we started to add graphics.
That's a kind of cool idea too, though. I'm just stopping you right there. Just the
it's great. It's great. Listen, I when I was in Edinburgh, I did it on a creaky piece of wood. If I stepped too far to the right, you would hear the wood move. So like, I'm not used to it being fancy. Now we use, like, there's a program behind me. There's graphics, there's video, there's lighting cues. Like, we really turned it into a piece of theater. And that happened very gradually. First, it started with lights. Then we were like, oh, we can throw in a couple pictures. And then those 2 pictures turned into graphics and scene design and this whole thing. And so now to travel with the show, like, Shannon, between you and me and your audience, it got a lot more expensive. I have to rent a screen. I have to pay a guy to help hang a projector. You know, like, it becomes this bigger thing. And
because it's union thing too, right? You have to pay.
Sometimes you run into union things. You can run into every problem you can have. I've run into. Yeah. And so you learn that as you go. And ideally, one of the funny things is, like, for a comedian at my level, this is an expensive show. But in the world of theater, this is the cheapest thing you can make, because, like, if you do another play, you need costumes, you need to pay 15 actors and orchestra musicians and whatever. And for my show, it's like you need a guy on a laptop and then me talking.
Yeah, no, I get it though. But what all is a part of it now, where it could be a man on a soapbox giving the show, or with the microphone giving the show. Now what extras can I expect when I come see it on Wednesday at the Den Theater?
Yes, I mean, you're going to see, hopefully, if we can get it to work, you're going to see some lighting cues. You're going to see we use different colors for different scenes. We have designs where, like, I'll mention summer camp, and, like, trees behind me will pop up on the screen. It looks like a children's pop-up book. And so all of that design is really intentional. And I think it really adds to it. And now it's gotten to the point where it adds to it so much that I can't go back to the old version. And so I'm working on a new show now, and I'm not using graphics yet. I'm like, the script has got to work.
You can't start with graphics. You get what I'm saying? Yeah, you got to I have to work this show because I start paying for all these graphics and stuff. I might not want it. I might cut this whole section.
Yeah. Exactly. So I need the script to be really, really strong. At least that, I've only done one show. Maybe at the end of my life, when I've done 12 shows, I'll say, well, this show was like this and this show was like that. But for now, this is kind of my process. It's the only way I've ever done it. But hopefully I can do these forever, and I'll find new ways to do shows,
No, that's what's up. I love it. I love the one thing too. You've gotten like doing Edinburgh, and then doing like I talked about earlier, you were on This American Life. Now, This American Life is a big deal. You get what I'm saying? So how did those things come together? I'm curious about this. You get what I'm saying? Are you pitching that? Is it just serendipitously happened? Like, people always think, oh, it just happened. But many times things are pitched. So go into it a little bit.
I would love to, because I think this speaks to what I was saying before about how, like, if you love the show and you think it's going well, even if you're not selling a lot of tickets, like, you can keep going. So we had done the show probably like 40 times off. We had maybe done it like 40 times in New York, and we weren't selling that great, but we were doing okay. And I asked the theater, I said, do you think I could do a couple of extra weekends? And they were like, well, your ticket sales are kind of okay. Like, we could or we couldn't. Do you really want to do it? And I said, yes. And so they had me back for that last final extension. And on that last final extension, on reopening night, a producer from This American Life came to the show. And I had sent Ira Glass an email inviting him, but he did not see it. And this producer named Aviva, this producer named Aviva just showed up. She said, I got an email from the theater, and I'm really interested in friendship, and I want to see your show. And so she came, and I didn't know she was there. Yeah. I just did my show. And a couple of days later, she emailed me, and she was like, hey, like, I really liked your show. Like, let's talk about it. And I was so excited. I was like, this is the big break I've been waiting for. Like, this is so cool. And that's when I learned that, like, you know, it was just it was kind of serendipity, but it was serendipity that I kind of created by just like not stopping doing the show, just like
not stopping doing the show. The theater was sending out emails. You did send out emails too, even if it didn't hit like his, you know, eyes or whatever to look at it when it comes to the show. But, you know, getting those things started kind of, you never know. You know, he may have said that, but he may have said, hey, I heard about this show. You know, people do
Who
that.
knows? You never know.
Yeah.
Listen, I've sent out crazy emails, Shannon. You wouldn't believe who I
So you push it. That's good for people to know. You know, you get what I'm saying?
And no, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, here's the thing. I didn't push it before I started to think it was good. You know what I mean? Like, I spent years.
Like, I don't want nobody to see it. Let me finish it first.
Yes. I think there's a really delicate balance, because I know some people sometimes where, like, they don't really have the show yet, and they go balls to the wall trying to promote it.
That is true.
And you don't promote it yet. Yeah. Do it. Yeah. Do it 30 times and then come talk to me. Seriously, you know, like, and do it. I did it before I opened off Broadway. I did it on a roof in Brooklyn, and I did it in a movie theater in Albany. Like, I've done it everywhere.
Yeah.
And so by the time we opened off Broadway and we got a couple reviews, and I thought, hey, this is good. This could be something. That's when I really started to hammer home, like, the PR stuff, which is something that I didn't know anything about before we started, and now I know a little bit more.
Yeah. What was the This American Life effect? Was it an effect afterwards?
Yeah, you know what's funny, Shannon, is that, like, I kind of thought it would be like finger snap, life changing. Yeah. That's not really what happened. You know,
people think they go had a what's the one guy? What's the writer? The one guy who was an elf or something. David Sedaris. Yeah. They think everything will have a David Sedaris effect. I was on This American Life, and immediately, I'm 8 books in, and I got and I'm touring with just the
they're throwing checks at me. That was not my experience. I mean, I think it's very, very cool. And you know what's happened to me a couple times, Shannon, and I think this is going to happen to me, like, for the rest of my life, which is, you meet somebody, you tell them, oh, like, what have you done? Oh, I was on This American Life. And then they go, oh my God, I know that episode. Like, I've heard you. You know, that's a thing that, or like, people from high school messaged me. It's like, hey, I was just listening to the radio and I heard you. Yeah. You know, it's kind of more like that. It's just like a bigger audience. And I really mean this. Like, the show was not any better or different the day before This American Life saw it or the day after. It was just more exposure.
Did it affect the sales? People coming out?
It did. We reopened off Broadway in New York. Totally self-produced. Again, no fancy producers, nothing crazy. And we did okay. You know, like, I wanted to have done better, but we did okay. And now in Chicago, like, again, we've sold okay. I'm not a millionaire, certainly, but we're doing all right. And so I'm really trying to figure out how to best use the platform to keep doing the show, because that's the only thing that I like doing. It's the only thing I kind of care about, you know?
No, I love it. I love talking to you. And I remember when I talked to you when we was in New York at the Moth party, and I was mentioning, and you were really cool, because I was like, I want to do a solo show, and I'm thinking about it. And I saw recently that you're going to teach. Mm-hmm. So you're going to be doing some teaching in New York on solo shows, or turning people's stories into solo shows, which you've had popularity with your show, but you were very open to that idea. And then, and this, a big part of this interview is me kind of getting information. The big part of this whole thing is me talking to storytellers who, you know, I knew along the way, and I just want to kind of make a connection with again. But what would you say some of those early preliminary things, if a person has in their mind that they want to do a solo show? And I just don't want to necessarily just do 5 of my stories, 5 random stories about, you know, because I've done that, where I've done 5 random stories, and I want to really put together piece to piece. What would you say some of the preliminary things, if you were starting a new one.
Totally. Yeah.
Or starting afresh.
Yeah. So I'm one of the fun things about that I'm going to teach this class is that I'm working on a new show. And so I'm going through the process with myself right now. And so I kind of know what it's going to take. The first thing is you're gonna need to write down all your stories. What's happened to you, and what happened. That's kind of the most important. And if you have 5 stories that you've told Shannon, I'd be like, what's the one that like really feels like the most you, or like that really changed you in some big way? And we start there. And at least for my class, it's 4 weeks. The first 2 weeks are just about that one story. Let's talk about it. Let's do it on stage. Let's critique it. Let's add in a joke. Let's do a couple things with it. And beef that up. Maybe it's a 5-minute story that we blow out to 15. Maybe it's a 15-minute story that we turn to 25, whatever. So we focus on that one big story. And then the second thing is the great solo shows usually have a pretty specific lens on them. Meaning, like, my favorite Birbiglia show is My Girlfriend's Boyfriend. That's the one where he's like, I never wanted to get married. So he has all these stories from his past. When he was in high school, his best friend or his girlfriend had another boyfriend, right? That's the story from high school. And you can have a story from high school that gets a lot of laughs, that makes people emotional. That's great that you have a story from high school. But without the contemporary lens of Birbiglia being like, hey, man, I never wanted to get married, and here's why. Mm-hmm. That lens gives that story a reason to be heard.
I hear you.
So it's not just the high school story anymore.
It's
now
not just a high school story, just some random high school story, get a laugh, nostalgia, feel like you're back in the day. It connects to something.
It needs to matter right now. What is the immediacy of this idea?
I like that.
So that's the big question that I'm always asking myself. It's the thing that I'm trying to crack with my new show, because I have the story, I just don't have the lens. And that's what I want to get from my students, right? Which is, especially if you're taking a solo show class, you probably have a couple stories and a couple jokes that you like to tell in front of people.
I love what you just said, though. I like those words. It needs to matter right now.
Yeah,
because that adds to like that adds power to it, even in a story. Like, even if it wasn't a solo show, but why does this story matter right now for me to tell it? Yeah. And when I tell it, it seemed like it would have an extra power behind it or some extra energy,
Totally. Yeah. And by having that lens, by having that right now, you can have like a long runway to get into that new story, and you can find a new way to get into it and a new way to close on it. It's not just the plot. The plot is only so interesting. This thing happened. Okay, who cares?
Yeah. No, one thing about like the premise of your story, the solo show that I'm going to, the friendship idea. Mm-hmm. And I think so many people go through that. Like, I've had multiple friends fall off the radar, and I can relate to that. I even had one friend, like me and him were best friends, right, in high school. And we're to the point where they put us in the yearbook as like high school friends.
Wow.
And we were like, man, we don't want to don't put that in there, because we thought it was like, it didn't look right. Me and him standing next to each other, so we just having fun with it or whatever. But me and him split up, and it wasn't like a defined reason on why. Now, I know in some ways we just moved on in life, but I had it's a podcast called Heavyweight. That's a pretty popular podcast.
Yeah.
And Heavyweight had reached out, and it was like, do I have a story? Like, to, they were pitching me, actually. They was like, hey, pitch us something, because we like your stuff. So I sent them. I was trying to think, and this is me too. If I don't have something, sometimes I'd be like, I don't have nothing. But many times I'm like, Shannon, start pitching, man. Pitch.
Yes.
So I was like, well, I got a best friend, and me and him were so close, but we don't even talk anymore, and I really don't know the reason, And then they reached out to him, and he was like, I don't want to do it. And he a big time.
Wow.
I mean, he's not big time, but he's an actor. He did Groundlings and all these other things, you know. So he's not opposed to getting attention. You get what? So I'm like,
Yeah.
I don't understand. I don't think he knew what heavyweight was. Number one, I don't think he's a podcast listener. And then, I really don't know what's up. You know. So in that sense, going to see your show, like has some it resonates with me, and I'm kind of looking forward to it for those reasons. I have other friends that I broke up with, but I know more of a reason. But this one, I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah. Oh, the fact that you have that experience I feel like my show is just made for you, Shannon. Yeah. I mean, like I want you to imagine for a second that he had said yes, and then so like you would probably sit down with him and you probably would have talked about, you know, what happened. For my show with me and Tim, who's like my friend that we had a falling out with, it's you know, he's you know, I don't want to give away too much, but eventually Tim comes to the show.
Yeah.
Sees my show, and then we talk.
If people listen to the This American Life, they can feel it.
Yeah. And so that's it. It felt like a pretty high stakes thing to happen to you, you know. Mm-hmm. And we talk about it, and now that conversation that Tim and I eventually do have is in my show. So it's this weird thing where it's like you make this show. Yeah. Wow. So the show keeps changing, Shannon. Even from when I saw you, I don't think I had recorded the This American Life yet. I don't think that had happened.
You had none at that point.
Yeah, and so God, that's wild. And so the show keeps changing because, you know, when you talk about somebody and then you have a conversation with them finally after 8 years, your show, just like your life, has to change in some way.
Wow, I like that.
And so it keeps evolving. Yeah.
Your show, like your life, continues to change. It keeps evolving. I like that a lot. Yeah. Who are some of your main influences and inspirations? You mentioned some people, but like, who do you really connect to, and who really, like, you look at and like, I like that, or just maybe inspired by?
Yeah, I mean, like, just in terms of solo shows, one of the interesting things is that there's not a ton of people that do them. You know, it's not like Netflix is putting out a new solo show every week.
Yeah.
You know, there's a couple Birbiglia, there's Hassan Minaj, there's Jacqueline Novak. I guess eventually, you know, there's Alex Edelman, there's Neil Brennan. So I've seen all those shows. Honestly, I feel like I'm influenced by those people, of course, because structurally it's the same medium. But also I'm influenced by like movies, like if you've ever seen the movie Rushmore. There's a movie Rushmore about this like kid who goes to high school and he's really precocious and like he's failing out of school, but he does every school activity. And he like fails out of school, and like literally like the song in my show I just stole from Rushmore. I was like, I love Rushmore. It makes sense to me. I'm going to use the same music. So like I'm influenced by movies just as much as I am by seeing a Birbiglia show. I think you need books too. You know, like you read something, a book of essays, whatever. Inspiration doesn't have to just come from listening to the Moth or listening to Risk.
100%, 100%.
You need that other stuff.
Yeah, no, I agree with you totally. Most of my inspiration doesn't come from people who doing the exact same thing I'm doing. You know, I'm inspired by. It be all kinds of people. You get what I'm saying? Like I'd be like, and they tell good stories. I listen to jazz musicians in interviews, and they're telling about bands that they've been in, and I'm like, I just like how he can weave that together. Or comedians, I get a lot from comedians, and just listening to how they tell their stories, even though they may be fictional, but sometimes I just like the way they crafted it together. And it made sense because in comedy it's so tight. Like they may have to move all the fat to get the laugh out of something, you know. So when you bring up movies and you bring up literature, I definitely connect with that. And then you watch the medium of what's happening. But a lot of times, myself, I watch what's going on, but then I want to see something different just to kind of take my mind out of that, because I'll start to do exactly what other people are doing. And I don't know, maybe that works.
Sure.
That originality part of me always like, I don't want to do exactly what somebody else just did.
Totally. I mean, we are a sum of our influences, right? Like if I had a jazz phase right now, I bet my next show is going to be very improvisational.
Yeah.
Like, did you watch Gerard Carmichael had a show on had a solo show on HBO
I heard
called
about
Rothaniel. And there's a really powerful moment where he did something as a storyteller that I don't really see a lot, which is the idea. A lot of times when you do a solo show or you tell a story on stage, particularly at the place like the Moth, we as the audience find out exactly how you feel about it. You know, like there's an answer kind of, right? Where it's like, we know. And Gerard kind of got to a point in his show where he was just like, man, this thought that I'm about to share with you, and it's a TV special on HBO. He goes, this isn't finished. He's like, it's incomplete. And I was like, I remember seeing that and being like, oh, I'm going to just steal that. I didn't know you could do that in a show. But especially because Birbiglia, who I love, he's very regimented. You're going to find out how he feels about it later. But Gerard is more jazz. Gerard is more like, you might find out that this idea doesn't have an answer. And so, yeah, being a student of hip hop storytelling, you gotta take it all.
No, I get it. Sometimes even I'm inspired by the attitude, like the attitude of. I'll be honest. Like before I even do shows, sometimes I watch battle rap, like hip hop battle rap. I just like the attitude. I like the attitude of, if you don't like.
It's so funny. There's a dude I work with, who's a battle rapper. And I'm like, we have more in common than most people think, because he's always
this stuff they have to memorize.
And he's like, and I'm friends with his brother, and his brother was telling me, he's like, oh, like he's like you, he's a writer, it's for battle raps, but like he's a preparer. He's not just gonna wing it, he's gonna write it and figure it out. And so I feel so connected to this dude. And we look so different. He's got tattoos on his hands, like he's like lived a life. And I don't have a lot of comparison to him, but we feel like when we hang out, I'm like, I get this guy.
No, yeah, I do have a lot of comparison, because a lot of times I think people put it in the eyes and it's not that. You get what I'm saying? Like I look at a lot of even people I know and friends that I have, and I'm like, if he expanded his creativity, or did something, just caught on to something, to know that that's okay to do as well. Like, and I push a lot of my friends. I'll say, hey man, this whole podcasting thing, because some of these guys are ridiculous as far as creativity wise, and I get a lot of inspiration from the creativity of friends that I have, Beach, Shep, all these guys that I know. But I ask them questions, but I use it a lot for podcasting, interviewing, storytelling, music, and all these other things. And I always push. I say, hey, expand it beyond just music, because it can go in a whole lot of ways. Because that battle rapper you're talking about, they write. It's ridiculous writing that goes into. If you watch battle rap, in how it's a word they're saying, but it means 3 different things at the same time. And you gotta listen to catch it in the audience and be like, oh, and you have to listen like, oh, I didn't even catch that. So it's a beautiful thing. And I like to add those Easter eggs in the stories as well. Do you add Easter eggs in your stories?
Absolutely. There's little things that if you're just paying attention,
only certain people will get.
That
and I'm
phrase,
not going to explain it.
You brought that phrase back, or you use that word in a new way. Like, absolutely. I want you to leave my show feeling like, oh, like he made this. Like, I make it for myself, right? Because like I want to challenge myself and I want to make something beautiful. But I also want the audience to feel like he made that for me. He like worked really hard to like give me this experience that is really. It's why I don't like half-ass it. Like I really like care about how it comes out.
I love that. You care.
Yeah.
Let's do something real quick. I've been doing this thing, like a little segment. I call it Be Brutally Honest. And it's just putting you on the spot to tell a story. But you don't have to like tell a Moth story. It's just we can talk it out or whatever. So I'm gonna go through some categories You pick the category. Then I'm gonna go through some prompts. If a story jumps to mind, from the prompt, it don't have to even be about the prompt. Just like we could talk it out. Just a quick little story. All right, you ready?
Yes.
All right, so it's the holiday season. I got food is one, gratitude is another, and cuffing season is the third one. And you know what cuffing season is. You're cool enough to know that. Yeah, so food, gratitude, cuffing season.
Let's do food.
I love it. I love it. A story about discovering your favorite cuisine. A story about discovering your favorite cuisine.
Yeah.
Or you could say pass.
I think I have a little story about this. Yeah, I think I do.
How did you discover your favorite cuisine? Or if something else jumped out to you?
Yeah, so I was a music kid in school, and I started high school, 9th grade, and for whatever, I kept wanting to I wanted to play football. And now people who know me now are like, Gabe is too soft to play football. You know what I mean? Like, that is not who I am. And I think it was because I was like overweight, and I wanted to do an activity where it's like, it's actually good that you're overweight. You're useful. You can stand here.
This is useful. Yeah.
Yeah. We need you to be overweight. It's actually a good thing. But at the time, I hadn't done that level of analysis yet. I just thought it was how I was going to fit in. And so I started high school, and I signed up for football, and I just quit immediately. Like I was just like, this is not for me.
Quit football?
I quit the team immediately. I did not have it in me. And I really felt like a failure, I felt like this is so emasculating. Like, it was just terrible. And to be honest with you, I got pretty depressed. I was I think I was going through puberty, and I was just a sad, for those couple months, I was just sad and didn't have anything going on. And then in a couple weeks later, they the choir at my high school needs new singers. They need boys.
Okay.
And I audition, and they put me into this group. And suddenly, I'm the only freshman boy in this group of all upperclassmen. And suddenly, kind of all the validation that I needed, or that I wanted from other people, I was starting to get. Whereas older kids were like, "Hey, you're useful. You have a nice voice. You should sing with us." And I was the only freshman in this group, and I started to hang out with these kids who were juniors and seniors, and they had cars. And I remember being like, "This is so cool!" I was 20 minutes ago, I was in 8th grade, and suddenly my friends have cars. Yeah, this is
real life now. This is real life.
Yeah, the middle school jump to immediately having friends with cars blew my mind. I was like, these kids, and no one feels older than when you're in school. When somebody's 2 years older than you, they might as well be 15 years old.
I've seen it. My daughter just went to high school, and she was like, an upperclassman complimented my outfit.
Yes.
I'm like, okay, watch out now.
Your daughter knows. Yes, she gets it. That's exactly how I felt. And so I started hanging out with them. And my family, we're Italian. And we're pretty, we're Italian, but we have stomach problems. So we don't really we didn't grow up eating exotic food. It was pasta, pizza, sandwiches, soup. Nothing crazy.
Yeah.
And I started to hang out with the older kids, and they were like, "Do you want to get sushi?" And I was like, "I've never had sushi before. No way. In no way would I ever try sushi." And my parents were like, "Ew, sushi. No, thank you." Yep, so I started to hang out with them, and I started to get sushi, and it started simple stuff, and then kind of evolved into really complicated stuff and bizarre stuff. And now it's sushi's what I get. Now it's what I eat before my big shows, and it's what I have on my birthday. It's become a very important food to me. That's actually, now that I was forced to on the spot talk about something like this, I'm like, sushi is really important to me. That's really interesting.
No, what you eat before a show or big shows is important. Because you think about that. You almost go for the same thing, and then sushi is light enough because you don't want to have a Nashville fried chicken sandwich.
Yes. Yeah. Because I'm on stage a long time. I can't be 40 minutes in being like, I need to lie down.
Yeah.
You need like sushi's protein and carbs, and it gets the job done.
We had to get sushi sometime, man. We had to keep it going, man. You had to.
Yes.
I like sushi, but you sound like you might know some. You're like, Shannon, try this. Try it. You'll love it. You'll love it.
You might like
dip
this.
it in that thing right there, and you'll be all right. Yeah. No, that's what's up, man. That's what's up. I appreciate you. I appreciate you big time.
Shannon, this hour flew by, man. I can't believe we were talking for 56 minutes.
We did the same thing over cheese the last time.
It's true.
We did the same thing. What's next? I know you got Chicago coming, and then what else you got going on?
I'm gonna do the show in Boston for a week in April, and I think after that, I would love to. One of the ideas I'm throwing around is like maybe we'll do like a couple more weeks in New York and then film it. So do another 2-3 week run, like 10 or 12 shows, film it, maybe put it up on YouTube, maybe try to sell it, maybe try to do a couple things with it. And I'm working on my next show. I just did my first half-hour version of it a couple weeks ago, and next week I'm going to meet with my director Greg to start working on it and figure out what it wants to be.
Are you bringing singing into any of these shows?
You know, we've talked about it because people want me to sing in this last show and I don't do it. And it's a thing that people ask me. So the honest answer, Shannon, is I don't know. Maybe.
Don't know yet. How can people keep in touch with you? I'm going to put everything below. So I'm going to put up things in the description, but just to mention.
Yeah, Instagram's the easiest, but I also have an email list that I emailed my Illinois people last week and just gave them a promo code. You know, like I try to take care of the people who are on the email list. So I'd say Instagram and my email list are like the easiest ways, and those are both in my link tree or on GabeMollica.com.
Yeah. And those email lists is where it's at. I used to think the email list wasn't a big deal, but the email list engages people more, you know.
It does.
And I've always built my email list, but then, you know, occasionally send emails, and but when I do, I'm like, wow, the engagement on emails is crazy.
I know it is.
I'm like, really, they don't even look at my Facebook post, but they
yes,
read the email, you know.
They will check your email.
Yeah, no, I appreciate you, man. I'm glad to talk to you, and I'm glad to talk this solo show thing. It inspires me as I listen to it, and as I plan to do more in solo shows. But also the fact that you're going to continue it. You know, I love it. So I'll be watching it. I'll be seeing it in a few days from now. So
I can't wait to see you and hang out, man. We'll take a nice picture.
Big time. So thank you all. This is Storyteller, the Storyteller, talking to people who go on stage, stand behind a mic, and just share from their life. You know, if this is your sort of thing, if you like this sort of thing, make sure you make sure you subscribe, make sure you become a part of it. Somebody saying thanks. Thank you, Volume Knob, for stepping in. But if you love this thing, you know, like, subscribe, comment, talk to us, and make sure you go subscribe to my podcast as well, Shannon Cason's Homemade. I'm going to be putting out a lot more stories. So hold on for me, Gabe, and we'll be right back. I'm always still.
Now that's homemade.